Welcome to Friday Night Party Line. I'm your host, Victor Frost, and this is episode 82. And boy, do we have a very interesting and fun episode. Hopefully fun. Of course, we don't know until it actually happens, but hopefully it'll be fun. And we've got a smattering of guests, old and new. And starting off in alphabetical order, we've got Adam. Hey, Adam, welcome back.
It's good to be back. I always enjoy a good teacher rant now and then.
Yes, and you guys will, if you haven't been keeping up on the Friday Night Party Line Google Plus page, you'll be finding out why Adam just said that. And in alphabetical order, as Churba is, actually no, it's still alphabetical order. We have Charlotte. Hey, Charlotte.
Hey.
Listeners of last month's episode will recognize Charlotte's voice. She made a brief little appearance last week, and now she's back. Now she's back, and she is on the show formally. Charlotte, how you doing?
Fantastic, thank you. I'm finally happy to be here on my own computer and not over Nelson's shoulder.
Now, Charlotte, you're a special ed teacher, right?
Mm-hmm. ICT, 3rd grade.
And in that you are also in the lovely state of New York.
Yeah. Brooklyn.
Yeah. So we've got 3 New Yorkers on the show tonight. And Churba is going to be here eventually, but until he is, it's moving right along. We got Nelson. Hey, Nelson.
Hello.
Hello. Actually, I know I said this like a couple of episodes ago, but I've been really burning through the CGP Gray's and Brady's podcast, Hello Internet, and I'm convinced that in about 10 years you are going to sound exactly like CGP Grey.
I hope so. I have a lot of thoughts about electoral processes.
If you sound like him, actually, our relationship might hit a few speed bumps.
But I'll explain everything.
Everything?
Everything.
Oh my.
And I am, of course, your happy host, Victor Frost. So we've got an edu-centric episode today, mostly because it's not rare that we have 2 panelists of the same profession available to come onto the show, and I'm very happy we have that this month. So we've got we got a smattering of topics. One I know, the first one is going to get Adam's attention and ire very dearly. Adam, what is Common Core, and why do so many teachers seem to hate it?
We all hate it because it's wrong. No, the Common Core are a set of standards that were adapted by essentially all of the states. The idea was that you would get all of the states on one set of standards so that everybody would be teaching the same thing, which sounds like a really good idea. There, however, are a bunch of problems. One is when people say Common Core standards, they don't always mean the same thing. Some people talk about the actual literal standards, like you're in 5th grade English or 5th grade math or what have you, your child should be learning these things. Or a teacher should be looking at them and saying, oh, these are the standards that I have to hit in my classroom to make sure that my children are on par with everybody else and continuing to learn at the appropriate rate. So that in and of itself isn't really a bad thing. But they started doing things like referring to Common Core as Common Core is going to be also the testing of students and basing teacher performance on the testing of students. And this has been something that every teacher gets up in arms about because, if you take someone like me, I teach special education almost exclusively. I teach 8 through 12 art. Now, while the testing wouldn't affect me directly, if they wanted to look at the tests from my school, some of my students can't make it through the New York State Regents exams. They just can't handle it. Or it takes them an extra long time, or they have a lot of difficulty with it. Our students passing is common, but not with like A's and B's. They sometimes just barely squeak by because of special education. It's harder for them. So if you were to judge the teachers based on the performance of the students at the school, then you'd be going through teachers every single year. You'd literally be like, oh, well, students didn't perform, let's get rid of this teacher and find another one. Alternatively, if there were a bunch of really clever students who decided that they didn't like a teacher for whatever reason, they could all just intentionally bomb the Regents and then the teacher would be fired.
Never
So
thought of that.
that's because you don't have clever, evil little geniuses like I do. But that's one of the reasons that the teachers are against it. There's also me personally. I have beef with it because the school said we're going to all Common Core, and I said, great. What are the art standards? And they went, what art standards? And I was like, are you kidding me?
Art standards.
The Common Core
About
consists.
you.
Common Core consists of English language arts, literature, and most sort of areas that can be grouped under English and language. And then there's also the math standards, which are the other major area. But there is no music, no art, no theater, no gym, nothing. There's not even health standards, like the gym teachers often teach health as well. There's no standards there, nothing. So every lesson plan that I've been doing this year
whatsoever, it kills me.
They also said there was very little training, so they said, here are the new standards, go! And if you've ever looked at, I'm not sure if you've ever had a chance to look at the websites for Common Core or New York State Education, but they have example lesson plans on there. Now, most of the time, my lesson plans are a page, 2 pages long, mostly because I've been doing it for a while and I know what I'm doing. The basic examples of lesson plans on those pages top out at like 10 pages, and the averages are like 5 to 6. Now, if you're not familiar with a lesson plan, you're like, oh, for 5 to 6 pages, how hard can that be? Except it would be 5 to 6 pages for 9 classes for me over the course of a week every day. So like I have 5 classes one day and 4 classes another, so that's one lesson plan for each class. That's what? Let's see, what's 9 plus 9 is 18, plus another 5 is 23. So it's 23 lesson plans a week times, what, 5 pages? So do you really think in about the hour prep time that I have each week I'm going to be able to do 100 and something pages of lesson planning? No. That is not a thing that can happen with the time that I have. So another thing that I've been having difficulty with is that for special education, they're also asking that for every class, for every student you have in the class, you list the accommodations and strategies you are using for each student individually, and not just overall, but at each section of the lesson, what are you doing for these 5 students you have in your class? So if I teach about 90 students total, in theory it works. I'm willing to bet that not a single teacher was consulted on the actual lesson plan section of the Common Core. In fact, I'm pretty sure that it was put out by a company, if I recall.
That sounds about right, yeah.
There was a research company that put it out and said, we did this great job, and in theory it's a great idea, but in practice it completely falls apart.
And the alt-cert program that I'm doing right now combines all of the most obfuscating and possibly pointless parts of the Common Core with all the most obfuscating and possibly pointless parts of, like, I want to say, like, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, Doug Lamar, like, other... Nope, I am not saying anything about my alt-cert program because they still own me and my soul. But they had us doing, like, 23-page lesson plans with scripting everything we were going to say in one column and everything the students were going to say in the other columns. So by the end of summer training, which was out in Harlem, I ended up being mostly clairvoyant. But only about, like, 5 people.
That's something that I did too. When I was going for my master's degree, we used what's called the Hunter model. And the Hunter model is pretty detailed and has all these sections, and my lesson plans would be 10 pages. Unit plans would be, 40, 50, 60 pages long. And when I got my first job and I handed in my first lesson plan, my assistant principal said, "What are you doing? Why are you using all of these pages? You could do this a lot faster. You don't need to write all this stuff. Do what would it take for a sub to come in and run your class? That's all you need. And you need less for you because you know what you're doing. You have a master's degree. You're certified." And I went, yeah, I am certified. I do know what I'm doing. I don't have to write these 10-page long nonsense. Let's shorten this up a little bit. So that's, when you get good at it. I mean, I think doing the long stuff while you're in school is not a bad idea because...
Oh, totally, yeah. No, like, becoming clairvoyant about those 5 kids was one of the hardest and one of the best things that I've ever done. But then I got this job out in Brooklyn Heights, and I showed it to my co-teacher, and I thought she was never going to stop laughing. Like, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you go first.
One of the
Well,
other
I'll take
things I
this
wanted to...
moment of conversational forestallment for a second to say Churba's on the show right now. He came in just a couple of seconds ago.
Yay,
Hey, Churba.
Hey,
Churba,
By
how
the
you
way, I started
doing?
paying back attention.
On your lower third, you have to put not a New Yorker, just saying. 'Cause
Yeah.
We are a bit
we're-
dense with this month, aren't we?
All right, well, Adam,
So
Charlotte,
I'll make
as
you feel
were.
comfortable by bitching about tourists. And, I don't know, maybe I'll pretend to be from Brooklyn and fight people.
All you have to do
I know
is be
nothing
really
about
combative about pizza.
I'm always
pretend
snobby
I'm
about
from
pizza.
Brooklyn
It's okay,
by,
it comes natural.
I'll pretend
What
I'm
are
from Brooklyn by taking a subway.
One of
You
the
live
other
in
things
LA. There's no subways there.
Let me just drop a bomb real quick. For real, fuck Chicago-style pizza. That is a fucking stew.
Oh,
Not a
snap.
pizza.
I support that, actually. Impressed.
Speaking
Thin
of
crust is
pizza,
best.
what I was going to say about the standards. Do you
Right.
like that non? Do you like that segue?
Love it.
The national standards also. There are there are almost too many to count. If you look at if you print out the standards, they're this giant thick stack of papers. If you look at the New York State Standards in the Arts, there are 4. And they are creating, performing, and participating in the arts, knowing and using arts materials and resources, responding and analyzing to works of art, and understanding the cultural dimensions and contributions of the arts, like art history. And that pretty much covers it. And if you click on them and you can check them out online, they get much more specific if you need to, like what a elementary schooler should be able to do, what a high schooler should be able to do. But really, those 4 are all you really need to get an idea of what's going on in a classroom. So when I write my lessons, I'll say standard 2 and 3, or standard 1, or standard 4, and my administrators know what I'm talking about. With the Common Core standards, there are so many of them. I think there's something like 30 or 40 in one section, and they're broken down by grade, and they're very specific but slightly changed language. It takes me almost as much time to go through the Common Core standards and pick out the ones that I'm sort of kind of doing in my class as it takes to write the actual lesson plan. And it's just infuriating going through pages and pages and pages, being like, nope, not that, nope, not that, nope, not that, and finding like the 1 or 2 that I feel like I have to hit to make my lessons, okay for when state comes in and turns everything upside down.
They're like Control F proof. I don't understand it.
That's true. You can't search them. That is also true. But
Just for the sake of this podcast, I'm going to institute something for me that I use in my classroom. It's the I agree hand sign, because otherwise I'm going to be an interrupting jackass this entire time.
I agree.
Well, Charlotte, unfortunately, there is a
I'm not
fatal
having a seizure.
flaw. There is a fatal flaw in that plan. See, it's a podcast.
Oh, fuck!
Visual gag. I think that
visual
may have been
gag in an audio show.
that
I
may
I
have
think that's
been
happened
our,
every
our earliest visual gag in the podcast.
That's actually, I think that's come up literally every single time I've done the podcast. Is like, let's do a visual gag on the audio podcast.
So wait, why did I bother wearing pants? This is so...
I look businessy, but the minute I came home,
Oh,
I
do a
put
dance
on
for myself.
I put on my shorts.
We're news anchoring it right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean,
Sorry
Common
about
Cores are terrible.
That was beautiful.
It resists
I-
being useful in any way.
So I have a question about the basic assumptions of the Common Core. One of them seems to be that students in a certain grade level are absolutely 100% at a certain learning point. Like, for example, third graders should be able to do this. But it seems to me, from a completely layman standpoint, that that's not really how people learn.
That's actually come up in my school a whole lot because, for example, if I'm teaching a 10th grade class and there are 8 students, they may be at 8 different reading and comprehension levels, ranging from literally 3rd grade all the way up to 9th and 10th grade. So I may have 2 students who are on reading level and can understand, and I may have students who are not only at a third grade reading level, won't admit it, and that adds to behavior problems in the classroom. So one of the things we have to do in the lesson for each student, like I said, you have to do what strategies you're using for every single student in every single lesson plan, in every single section, is, all right, this student's at a 5th grade learning level, what am I, or reading level or math level, what am I going to do to make sure that there's an accommodation in place so that they can participate with everybody else and not fall behind or fail in the class, which is an incredibly difficult thing to do when you have 2 different levels. Imagine if you have 8 of them, and none of the students will talk to each other or like each other. Then it becomes more difficult. I mean, I'm fortunate because in art, that's sort of taken a backseat. Literacy is a backseat to the actual art, and in my classroom, I can do things like verbal assessments. So if I have students and I'm doing a critique with them, the critique is going to be verbal. I'm not going to have them write it out if I don't think they can handle it. Some students want to. So I'll be like, if you want to write it, write it. But I'm not going to make the student who I know is going to get hysterical because he's in the 11th grade and can barely read and can barely write. I'm not going to be like, well, now you have to write your own critique, because he'll either get up and leave or stop working or just refuse. I mean, there are a million things that can go wrong. So while those standards are there saying 3rd graders should be able to be at this level, or assuming that there's that prior knowledge, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're in 3rd grade because you're, you know, what, 7 is 3rd grade-ish? 7, 8, 5, 6. So if you're that age, that doesn't necessarily mean you're at that educational level.
Wait, no.
That's just sort of where they want
to. Like 9, 10.
Yeah, it's around that age.
I have to think about what grade is my brother in, because he's.
Because kindergarten's like 5, first is like 6, second is 7, but it assumes a certain amount of prior knowledge, and when you think about it as a grade level, you don't want to think about it as age. You want to think about it as knowledge level, and that's why we do like placement testing and level testing. And I'm sure that in your ICT classroom, Charlotte, I'm sure you're familiar with this thing where you can look at a student's IEP, which is an individualized educational plan, for those of you who don't know the alphabet soup.
Paperwork, endless.
Yeah.
But the IEPs are actually useful.
Yes, they are. They're very useful when they're done properly. A lot of times
we have some copy pasta in some IEPs. My co-teacher actually had these kids in 1st grade, and now she has them in 3rd, and there was copy pasta that she had written in their 3rd grade IEPs that their 2nd grade teachers had just been like, whatever.
And those are the most infuriating, because we've had students come to our school and it'll say, you know, so-and-so is a positive, outgoing girl who likes to interact with others, and you meet this person and it's like, no, this student is a horrendous, you know, sociopath who hates everybody and breaks things because she thinks it's funny. I don't know who wrote this. And sometimes they'll be that different.
I mean, the worst part about this particular copy pasta is that my co-teacher is amazing, and the people that did the copy pasta just didn't really bother to do anything either figuratively or literally about these kids' IEP goals. So they're basically where they were in 1st grade when my co-teacher got done with them. And it's really frustrating for her.
I could see why that would be infuriating. I mean, at least she has prior knowledge of the kids. I mean, she has that at least.
She's like the biggest asset I have as a new teacher. She's amazing.
And I don't think Common Core addresses IEPs from what I've seen. It doesn't address IEP goals. That's something else entirely.
Not at all. Those are so subjective.
Yeah. And it's also so individualized. Like, again, I'll explain because I'm sure not everybody here knows what an IEP goal is. On somebody's individualized education plan, IEP, they might have a goal that says, like, we'll be able to sit in class for 20 minutes before asking for a break. Or sometimes it'll have something like, we'll have tests read to them and responses written for them. So for someone who does have a very low reading and writing level, they can still take a Regents if they have a very high comprehension, but they just don't have very good decoding skills. So that kind of stuff isn't really covered in Common Core either. So then you have this other problem of, all right, this student has an IEP goal that says they're at this one grade level, but they're in a classroom with these other students who are technically at another grade level and who are also a little bit scattered. And now you have to write lesson plans that sort of combine all this together. And oh, by the way, if they fail a test, we're firing you. Like that's that's why so many teachers are up in arms about it. And actually, one of the few things that One of the few reasons I like Cuomo is that he's gone back and said, no, these are no good, and we're pushing back against these.
That actually helps me codify like my biggest issue with the Common Core as a whole, like the fact that it's so purely content based and that there's no real standard of like teaching practices. I don't know.
Yes, that's actually
It's all content and no form, and it's kind of killing me.
exactly. They give examples of, oh, you should teach this way, or give suggestions of books that you should use on a certain grade level or for a certain
So vague.
task. What's that?
They're so vague.
They are, and what's worse is that they don't. They give you like questions that you should ask or general ideas that you should teach, but don't give any way to teach them.
Yeah.
Information will only get you so far. I can throw information at students all day long, but if I don't make it interesting and if I don't do something like what I'm doing this, I can get into it if you want me to. But I'm doing something totally correct with my curriculum this year. If you've heard me on the show before, you know that I am big into using games and game theory to teach because games are fun. I like games. Children's like games. The children's love when I do games with them. So what I did this year is I told the students the first day when they came in, I'm changing everything. This year, your goal is to play Crazy Eights with me. And that means that your goal is to get 888 points by the end of the quarter. And there are different ways you can earn points. They have these things called P-sheets, which are like behavior participation sheets. You can earn 6 points per class from those. You can earn points from projects. No matter what project you do, when you finish, you bring the final to me, and we'll do a little verbal critique. And for each element of art that is represented, the project's maximum value goes up by 50 points. So let's say a student does a project and they were using line and color and shape really well. They did a really cool piece of graffiti or something like that. Well, that's 150 points that they can earn. Let's talk about it. Did you take your time? Does it look neat? Did you do a good job? Were you really thinking about it? Did you try and pull a one-cheeker, and are you just handing something in to hand something in? So I can talk about it with them, and I record that, and they get points that way. Another way they can earn points is by doing various projects around the room for smaller amounts of points. They can do cooperative projects. The other thing that I said is there are also secret achievements. There are secret ways that I'm not going to tell you that will earn you extra points. Everybody's name is going to be up on the wall, and when somebody earns an achievement, they're going to get a little badge next to their name that says what they did and how many points it's worth. Now, I haven't told them what any of them are, and some of them I'm sure I'm going to make up on the fly as well because I can. They're secret. I said one of the things is going to be if a student comes to class and gets a perfect 6 each day for 15 days, which is every other day for a month because that's how often they have me, they'll get an extra 15 points. So if you're perfect for every day for a month, you get 15 points. I've spotted 3 students who've been helping other students while I've been running around the classroom trying to help other people, and they've helped the other students. There's going to be badges going up when they help somebody that's going to be like, hey, you helped somebody today and it was really valuable. That's 5 more points for you. So I've told them that there are more than 888 points available. So you can get 1,000 points if you work really hard. You don't need to. 888 is what you go for. So inevitably I got the question of, what if I don't get 888? I said, don't worry about it. Just go for 888. Because what I haven't told them is that 888 points is an A. I didn't tell them what a B or a C or a D was. I didn't say, oh, 65% is like 500 and something points. You can get like 525 and be good to pass the class. I'm not going to tell them that.
You totally voted them. That's awesome.
I know, right? So everyone's like, oh, points.
There is no try. Baller.
Exactly. So now I feel like Chris Hartwick from At Midnight now, because every time someone does something in class, I'm like, points, 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 points. You get points. You get points. How many points did you get? How many points are you at? Hey, look, you got 6 points today. You started a project. Yeah, you still have 888, but now you only have 882 to go, and you already knocked it down, and you haven't even done a project yet. So you're already on a roll. And it's this bottom-up way of grading that I've been trying to figure out for about a year and trying to make work. And eventually I just went to the principal, who's new, and the curriculum director and said, I'm not going to do percentages of, oh, it's going to be 20% tests and 25% grades and 15%. I said, it's a nightmare for me. The kids don't understand it because they'll come into class one day and have like a B and then skip and then come back the next day and they have a D and they're like, what the hell? Because they've only been to class like 3 times. This way, you're at 0, there's 888, go. And the kids are buying into it. So it's really exciting. But, go ahead.
I wish
I'm
there was
back.
a way to get that to translate to third grade. I mean, like, these guys don't respond to grades as an incentive, be it positive or negative. Like, with these guys, like, they had a second grade teacher who would try and motivate them with cards, like a red card if they were being bad, and I hate calling kids that, and I hate that entire system of labeling. But they also had someone being like +5 points if you do X or Y, and like the kids hated it. They made fun of it, and they called her Snape. And like my
That's-
kids are awesome. They're like little nerdlings, and I love them. But they're all like, they all have these incredibly tragic backstories. So I don't know. They don't respond to traditional incentives. They respond to, so far, they respond to like me talking to them like they're humans, or me playing into their like weird quirks, and then steering it away, like the guy with the placebo.
Mhm. And that's something that's really part of it is presentation because my Kate turned to me and said when I was explaining this idea that I was really excited about, I'm going to do this game thing. She's like, any student who's smart's just going to say that's just points towards the grade. I'm not going to do that. And I was like, Kate, I teach special education kids. They're not as smart as you were in high school. All right,
Oh,
because she graduated high school early, and she was like, "Well, I was a smart kid. I would just called you out." I was like, "Kate,
yeah.
special education kids. They need this sort of other motivation because they don't care about grades that much, or at least a lot of them don't. So you have to present it in a different way. Like I already had kids looking over my shoulder when I was entering points, and they're like, "How come I have a D? How come I was like, look, don't pay any attention to the percentages, don't pay any attention to the grades. They literally mean nothing until the very last day when we take the number of points that you have out of 888. Go for 888. That's all you need to worry about." And it made it fun for them. And any way that you can sort of break the regular monotony, like I have never given a worksheet in the past 3.5 years to a student. Kids hate worksheets.
True
They
facts.
hate them. So if you can find some other way to engage a kid, one of the things that I do is students have to pick their own art projects. I finished trying to stop. I stopped assigning students projects at that school because every single time I would assign something, it would be, "Yeah, I don't want to do that. That's boring. This is dumb." I'd get a million complaints about it. And inevitably, I'd have kids who would come up with their own ideas that were really good and even better than some of my ideas for projects and be like, "Can I do this incredibly complicated thing?" And I'd say, "Yeah, we're totally do that. Why not?" And eventually, after my first year, I just moved over to, all right, everybody's going to pick their own project, and I'm going to facilitate them being creative. So instead of trying to force students to do projects and fighting back on it, if a student wants to do graffiti, I'm gonna do a graffiti project with that kid. If a kid wants to learn how to draw humans better, I'm gonna do drawing lessons with that kid. And because the classes are relatively small, I can do that. You know, I can have one kid doing game programming on the computer. I can have another kid doing painting. I can have another kid doing drawing. And
That's
because
fantastic.
it gives them agency, and that's my favorite buzzword is agency. It's basically allowing students choice in what they are going to or how they are going to learn. If you've ever heard of a Montessori school, they kind of take it, I think, a step further, where students will go to whatever class they want to whenever they want to and just start participating, which I think that's awesome, but not for every kid, obviously.
I worked at a Montessori preschool for a few months a while back, and it just, on the preschool level, I don't think it works as a model, but that's just my personal preference.
I don't know. I mean, I went to a Montessori school in Seattle. I think it was a preschool. I think I went for 1 year.
Were you with kids who couldn't talk?
Possibly.
Hmm.
It was a very
Please,
Yes,
Nelson,
this is kind of
remember
a-
when you were 3.
Oh,
yeah, I don't remember. I remember there was a lot of blocks and there was a lot of dress up, which was awesome. I turned out okay.
Is that where the
That
is that where the
explains a
hats came
lot.
from?
That's where I really like dress up. I mean, I
It
wear
explains
suits
a
all the
lot.
time. Yeah, dress up is awesome.
There's nothing wrong with dress up time.
I'm
Absolutely
having
not.
it right now. Sorry, dear.
But yeah, it's I think allowing students, especially kids who are special needs, who often don't feel they have any control over anything they do, and will often say, well, that's part of the reasons that we get outbursts a lot with special education kids is because they feel that emotion and they're like, well, I have no control, so I'm just going to go with that's what I feel, so I'm just going to do it. And teaching them that they actually have control over their own emotions and their own behaviors is something that's part of like what we teach at the school that I'm at. But when they start to realize that they have some control over what they're learning and how they're doing it, they start to participate more because they take ownership of it, and it becomes more important to them as opposed to someone just saying words, you know. And we're done. Good night.
Well, that was easy.
I'm gonna put Nelson on some kind of watch list right now, but I'm basically a 5-year-old, so my style of teaching is anything that gets people bored. Like, if it bores me, I'm not going to do it. So, I don't know.
Huh, that makes sense. I mean,
That's pretty
nobody
much my
wants to
only
learn boring
style
shit.
so far.
Well, like
But
if you
it's
think
really-
about it, like if you think about
Right.
math, right? If you just throw math problems in front of a kid, that's kind of boring unless they really like math.
It's
But if you-
torture.
Yeah, and I remember being in elementary school and they were like, "Here, do these 50 math problems."
Why?
The long division. This is gonna take me like 8 hours.
Also, remember that you have to do them long division, and you have to do them by hand because no one's gonna have a calculator in the future. So it's not in their pocket.
No one's gonna let you use a calculator. It's like, try and stop me.
Do not know a single person who designs, engineers, or manufactures things who doesn't keep a calculator of some sort in their toolbox. The only reason I don't have one in my toolbox right now is because it gets hot in there and I don't want it to kill the batteries.
Well, think about it. If I came to you with a worksheet, or came to you with a lot of my kids like Call of Duty. So if I came down with a breakdown of these are all the guns of Call of Duty, and these are how much damage they do and how fast they fire, how much damage do they do per second? Algebra problem.
Shit.
And suddenly the kids are like, what? So it's all a matter of, throwing stuff at them that's relevant to what they're interested in, and then giving them a little bit of choice. And that can be difficult when you have 30 or 40 kids in a classroom. That's why class size is so important.
Exactly. And, like, I have this class of maybe 26 kids. We're going to start doing an autobiography unit next week, and I've been planning this thing like it's my gestating child. Like, this is kind of my audition at the school. And we're doing sort of kind of memoir, but also alternative memoir, so comic books for the kids with different reading levels, and memoirs in verse, and memoirs in prose, and then we're going to be writing and talking about the writing process. And
have you ever seen the Owly comic books? OWLY Owly?
No, I'm looking them up right now.
Definitely get those for your kids, especially kids who have trouble reading. Owly is a comic book that does not have words in it, and when the characters talk, they talk in pictograms. So, like, one character will be looking for his friend Wormy, and it'll be like he'll go and he'll talk to another character, and in the little word bubble, instead of like "Have you seen Wormy?" it'll have like the character of Wormy in the little box, in the little word bubble with a question mark next to him. And for kids who can't decode language, they can still understand the story, because they can look at that and go, "Oh, he's asking about his friend, and he wants to know, where his friend is." And you can kind of like figure those things out. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And this is perfect for one of my kids. He has, like, not so much on the comprehension, not so much on the decoding, and he has, like, auditory issues as well. So he loves, like, his mom has been getting him into silent movies, and he loves, like, Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, like, the old classics. So I'm going to get him into this.
Yeah, it's also nice. It's also a good, like, extra activity, like, hey, who wants a coloring sheet, Owly? Because you can just print them. I think you can actually just print them out online for free, too.
Nice.
If you've never seen them and you like comic books at all, Scott Rubin actually turned me on to them from Geek Nights, and also he's a friend. But he was like, hey, check these Owly comics out. They're adorable. And I went, there are no words. This is amazing. Another comic book that I think that does that is called Corgi, like the dog.
Yes.
I got that at Mocha a while ago. But that's one that doesn't have any words. And there's also a book I'm forgetting the artist's name, and it's killing me. It's called The Arrival, and it's this really beautifully illustrated book.
We used to sell it. I worked at a bookstore for kids for a really long time, and we used to sell it, and it was a really, like, it made a humongous impact. When a kid read it, they would come back with, like, 10 friends.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's great because
Yeah.
it's an allegory for immigration to the United States, specifically an allegory of people who are immigrating to the United States around the 1940s, I want to say, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of World War II hints in there, and that's actually something that I'm going to be doing in my classroom. I thought of it today as I was thinking
Yeah.
about ways for kids to earn points. I'm going to bring that book in and basically say it's 100 points if you can correctly identify the allegory of this story. What is this story trying to tell? You know, and if they can correctly identify it, 100 points. Because there's no words in the whole book, but it's a beautifully illustrated book. But that's another one you could bring in, and now you have two graphic novels in a book that's illustrated, and there are no words. So you can either use that to help students verbalize or help students write. Like, what would you write tell me what's going on this page. What are they doing? You know, where's Ali going? What's he looking for?
My co-teacher actually does something sort of similar to that. She calls it Picture of the Day. It's basically about inferences and context. Like, you give a kid a weird picture and go, like, what are you noticing? Based on what you're noticing, what do you think just happened? What is going to happen? Like, today I think we gave them some kind of sea serpent, and we got amazing responses, especially from the hypochondriac kid. But, yeah. He said it was a spirochete. I love this child.
What?
I don't even know what that is. Is that a Pokemon?
He said it was a spirochete. It's either a Pokemon or some kind of, like, microbe. I'm not entirely sure.
Spider keet?
No,
I'm looking up Spirochethe.
that one. I just typed it in.
It is in fact a bacteria. Gee, I wonder why the hypochondriac knew what a spirochete looked like.
What I want to know is how he has this advanced medical jargon so internalized.
That's kind of impressive.
His brain
It's
is
gotta
wonderful.
it could be like an obsessive compulsive thing too. Like
That would make sense. He has a lot of the tics, but
Yeah.
it's hard for me to evaluate anything.
Yeah, I do a lot of that. I'll be like, oh, this kid's definitely. I'm not a psychiatrist, but that kid's got ODD.
Oh, dude, like every other kid in my entire school is oppositional defiant, or their parents think they're oppositional defiant.
Yeah, I
Thank
often
you for
get
explaining
students who's I often get students and this teachers will be like, oh, I think this kid's ODD, and I'm like, well, they
Maybe
might be
they just don't
ODD,
like you.
or they might have what I've developed in the school called, and this is it's a phrase that I coined, and other teachers have used it to jest with me, but it's called GAD, and it's a general asshole disorder. If you've got any number of disabilities, I can help you. If you have GAD, I'm not sure I can help you with that.
I'm gonna tell my co-teacher about that one because I feel like we'll use it.
Never
Yeah,
use it in front of the
one-
students. We never use it in front of the
Of
kids.
course. No, we have this one little girl who's super manipulative already, and those kids who've always been told their whole life that they're so cute, and they just get really sociopathic about it. Yeah.
I think I have about 3 or 4 of those in my school.
Tiny, adorable, blonde British girl.
Oh,
She's-
does she have an accent?
hmm
Oh, she would mess with me so hard.
She
I'm a
gets other girls to steal for her.
I'm a sucker for.
Oh, how
like,
clever.
Yeah.
That's the most adorable thing in the world. Are little British girls when they're like, please. I'm like, oh, whatever you want.
Yeah, she sounds like a little girl from a BBC miniseries who would tug on your sleeve and be like, "Excuse me, the ghost wants more crumpets." I have seen too many miniseries for this. You cannot.
And now we have a Doctor Who episode.
I think she's just going to grow up and be every character
you my
Zoe
mummy?
Deschanel's ever played.
God.
I'm the library.
Okay,
Oh,
so
man.
I'm gonna sort of prod this along to the next topic. Vox.com did an article recently about a school in it doesn't matter where it is. The article is taking too long to load. Did an article recently about a school in Wyoming called Jackson Hole High School, and they used to start their school times at 7:35 a.m., but instead they've recently pushed it back to 8:55 a.m. After the change, students reported that they were sleeping more, and they were apparently even more likely to show up to class on time. They're not the first school to push back start times, but they're probably the first school to push morning start time back this far. What do you guys think? Oh shit! What was that? What do you guys think of schools starting later as opposed to earlier?
I have
You guys got to get
two
their ass
things.
early in the morning.
I have two things to say from personal experience. My
Nelson,
high school, my high school in San Ramon, California, had a policy which I think was the best school policy I have ever encountered, where normally school starts at around, I think it was like around 8 a.m. But Monday mornings, school started an hour later.
Hmm.
And it was so good. Like, I can't even describe, and it's just a 1 hour change on one day of the week, but that, like, from coming from schools that didn't, do that or started at like 7:30 or, all that stuff, that, extra hour on Monday mornings, after people got to school, we could just start. Like, there wasn't that kind of wake up, get back into the school day, like, oh, it's the new week kind of thing. It was kind of amazing. And my second anecdote is that during my senior year, there was a policy where if you were 18, you could sign yourself out of school, like in many schools. And I had chosen to take a gym class that was required as my first period, or I think it was called A period, which was technically before school started, so it was actually at like 7:30 in the morning, every single day, except, it was 8:30 on Mondays, so that was good. But after about half the school year, half of the senior year, I turned 18, and then I basically never went to that class ever again, because it was ass early in the morning, and it was gym. And I actually did not walk. I did not do the graduation walk in high school because I failed PE, and I had to do a summer school thing to actually graduate high school.
You're such a rebel. Swoon. I wish we'd had that sign yourself out thing. Like in my high school in DC, we had a hole in the wall we used instead of a door, but I still had to forge sick notes for pretty much everybody in the grade.
One time, and I've told this story before, but one day, I slept. So we had 3 periods in a day, and they were like extra long periods, and they would alternate depending on the day. So I slept through first period, and of course I didn't go to the gym because, but I slept through first period, and then I got up around second period, and I kind of psyched myself up. I was like, yeah, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to, go in for lunch and then go to my class after lunch, and it's going to be awesome. So I bike to school at lunchtime, and I have lunch with my friends, and by the end of lunch, I'm so sick of being in the school, I signed myself back out and went home.
Fair enough. I just had a deal with my homeroom teacher where I'd basically show up late and they'd just sign me in as being there because I'm just like, yeah, I'll always show up. I'm just not going to be there early because I live a fair way away. I didn't, but they thought I did because they had my old address. So they're just like, yeah, sure, man, extra half hour sleep in, I'm good with that.
Well, as far as opening later goes, I approve on 2 levels, right? One, the high schooler in me was like not having to wait at a bus stop at the ass end of the morning in the cold and maybe getting a little extra time in the morning. That would have been great. Showing up to school at like 8:30, 8:45, 9 o'clock, that would have been amazing. Plus, as a teacher, if the school day starts later, I get to go in later. Or I can even go in early and then get more time if I need to, but I don't mind that either. Yeah, I'd get out a little later, but I'd get out at 3:45 or 4 instead of 3:30 if I could come to work half an hour later or an hour later. I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, it's the same gig with a lot of tradesman jobs as well. You shift your hours around so that you're, getting in at a whatever time and then getting out at a better time. Like I used to work a paint job for a while where we'd knock off at about 3:30, except we had to be there at 5 o'clock in the morning. Fair enough. You know, we got to have dodged all the school time traffic because we all lived away from there because it was over in the arse end of Wynnum. We got there nice and early in the morning, got a good start before all the people who were working in the complex we were painting arrived. You know.
I think the difference is that you chose to work at those hours, whereas
Sort
like
of.
when you're a school kid, they're just like get here, at the ass end of the morning, or you're not gonna be an adult.
You will never
Or
grow
your
up. You will
parents get
remain.
slapped with some truancy stuff.
You will remain in high school forever.
I can't speak to how the actual tiny people in my class would feel about starting even later, but I know their parents would love it. The tiny people, I think, pretty much wake up around 6 no matter what because they're tiny.
Oh God, my brother
And bounce around and
wakes
watch
up around
TV.
6 every morning. Ugh.
Yeah. My godson's up at 5 and doing God knows what, breaking things, nailing things to other things, being on people. He's
That's
2.5.
I was that way when I was like 7, 8 years old. I would just wake up as soon as the sun came up. I was up and ready to go, But when I was a teenager, I just remember dragging myself out of bed. I'd have to wake up at 5:30 or something in order to get ready by 7 because I knew
5
it was just snail
alarms.
space.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just
He never
that.
did
Maybe
that.
it's just that all those annoying morning people, the ones who are super chipper and awake in the morning. Maybe it's not that there's something wrong with them. Maybe it's just that they kept all that youthful energy that they had when they were a kid, and just kept it on into adulthood instead of getting rid of it like most of us have.
So when they were
Maybe.
babies, they just slept late?
Stored up the extra sleep. Smart.
Yeah,
I should have done that.
Well, it's funny because now if I even if it's a weekend, if I don't set my alarm, my internal clock is so set that I wake up at 6 o'clock
Yep.
no matter what. No matter what's going on, I wake up at 6. And if I don't have school, I just go back to sleep. But Malcolm and Zoe also make that a little complicated because they can sense when my eyelids pop open, and then I have dogs jumping on my face, like it's morning, hooray!
Considering you're a school teacher, I thought it would be the muffled screaming as you stuff the pillow over your face to try and not wake up your wife.
Sorry, Nelson. Sorry.
So speaking of nailing,
What? Get out of it. Don't sully my
Are we
good.
having another? Are we having another TMI
we
segment from
haven't.
last?
So
Bye.
Charlotte. So this is a little personal, but Charlotte and I live in the same city, obviously.
Finally.
But we don't really spend the night at each other's houses during the week, unless.
because you're not married.
Well, yeah,
Clearly, yeah.
Why would you stay?
but that's because I wake up around 8, and she wakes up what time? 6, 5?
5:30.
Sparrow's fart.
Oof.
So a normal time for a teacher.
Yep.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
I didn't used to think I was a morning person. Now I just don't think I'm a person.
Well, I feel like when you wake up before 6 in the morning, it's really the morningness hasn't kicked in yet.
Dude, I wake up so early that the chickens haven't shown up at the slaughterhouse down the street yet.
That's early.
You wave
I
at them
live
as you
down
go
the
by
street.
on your way to school.
Wow.
Brooklyn.
Love and goodbye, little friends.
No, they're actually kind of cute when they're screaming in terror. She said, as a teacher.
Actually, no, I was just thinking.
I understand
I was
that sentiment. I've had little kids when I was teaching elementary school. They're like, "You look like a bad guy from a movie." I'm like, "Yes, keep that in mind, child."
You know,
Don't you
really
forget it.
cement that. Get a barcode tattooed on the back of your head.
Yeah, do it.
Get that
My
whole-
coach
Yeah,
That's
I-
an excellent
super
marriage.
androgynous.
THX is I think too much of a reference for those kids. I have kids who don't. I had to teach my students who Weird Al Yankovic was and why
What?
he was great.
That should be part of the Common
know
Core.
that.
You
Yes!
to see Adam. Have you seen teens react to Weird Al?
I have not. I think I'm going to go watch that soon.
Man,
But the English teacher used his song. Oh my God, the
Word
grammar
crime!
one. Grammar crime. Yeah, word crime.
Crimes.
Exactly. But she played that in class several times, and the smarter kids were like, "That's amazing," and the other kids were like, "I guess it's a good song." It's like, no, you clearly weren't listening to the words.
No.
But man, like, just think of all
I
the
don't know, I
teaching
like-
opportunities contained in Weird Al's entire view. I mean,
Jurassic
convert Frank's
Park is
2000-inch
scary
TV
in
to
the
meters.
dark.
I heard
Which
Jurassic
floor-
Park with
45.
Australian accent.
What? You don't know Frank's 2000-inch TV?
No, he heard me and you at the same time and got Jurassic Park with an Australian accent.
Oh,
Because he was singing while you were talking, so I didn't hear what you said.
I think
Jurassic Park.
I think one of the most important things about this starting later idea is that it's based on evidence.
Yes.
So much of the teaching theory that I see bandied about isn't really based on a lot of evidence, or it's based on super old studies.
Nelson, practical evidence has no place in the classroom. Let me know.
I will counter that. Hopefully, sarcastic comment.
Yes, please. That's why I said mansplain.
Well, it's one of the best parts about the games education thing that I'm doing is that there's now science backing it up. People have done research with their kids in the classrooms, and it works.
Nice.
So that's one of the reasons why I'm doing that so much. So if they say going to school later improves attendance, and students attending will increase their learning because they're there, important to learning. I think that's
as well as physically.
exactly. What's the old saying? If it bleeds, it leads. I'm sorry. If it works, use it. Whatever works, use it in the classroom. I don't care how crazy it may sound. If you have research saying we tried this for a year and it worked and all of our students' test scores went up and everyone's happy and they're great and they're learning, do it. And how hard can it be to move everything an hour? I don't understand. I don't see how that would be a problem.
Well, there was an actual problem that was brought up for it, and that was primarily about the logistical problems with coordinating buses.
So here's what you do. You get all the bus drivers and you say, you know what hours you do? Add one to all of them.
Well, it's that they would have to get additional buses because they have buses that pick up the littler. Look, this is what the article says. I'm just telling you what the article says. In Virginia's Fairfax County, for example, the first buses start to pick up high school students at 5:45.
Anything. I'm sorry. I'm from D.C. We mug people from Fairfax County on the regular.
You just got teacher burned.
No, you just got Nova burn. I'm sorry.
Fairfax aside, I mean, if they're saying, oh, well, we'll have to cycle the buses, what you could also do is solve the problems. There's nothing stopping anybody. Like, that's one of the things that I realize when I'm teaching is if I have an idea and I run it by administration and they're like, sure, whatever, it's okay, I then don't have to wait for anybody. I just do it. If everybody likes the idea of, hey, everything can start an hour later, all everyone has to do is go, all right, let's start doing that, and then do it. It's not that complicated. If the buses would have a problem because there would be a separation of time between the little kids and the older kids, if you move the older kids up an hour, older kids, younger kids, visual, I know, audio show, move the younger kids up an hour. And then, oh, look, it's so great. It's like a bird. It works so well.
Another visual gag? Really? At first.
Charlotte, you're new, but you'll find that this happens quite often.
I think we're actually on Tropes, like the Tropes website, as visual gag on audio show. I think that's actually on the Tropes website somewhere.
I'll be right back. I gotta look into that.
Okay, we've lost Victor for the next 10 hours.
We didn't have him for the first episode. Why do we need him now? A zing.
He's the only one with controls to make the thing go, so I hope you can
right.
make it along the speech.
Throw it out the wall.
One of these days, Victor's just going to replace himself with a robot while he goes and does something else, and we won't even know. Because it just runs smoothly.
think
Hit a
if I-
button.
Do you,
I wouldn't
do
have
you
known
think if
anymore.
I couldn't replace myself with a robot, I wouldn't have by now? Jeez.
How do we know you haven't already?
You wouldn't get that smooth vocal timbre out of a robot.
It'd be more like, my
Oh,
name is
no.
Victor. Gleep, glorp.
0, 0, Victor,
Speech
0.
synthesis is getting pretty impressive.
Welcome to Friday Night No String equals open.
No!
So I think we've beaten that topic
We may
back
have, yes.
back into the day before.
So what other education topics did you have on the table for us, Vic?
Well, I just wanted to talk about a little bit briefly, and this wasn't a formal topic until you had suggested it about I don't know, a few days ago. But let's go back like about a minute and a half and talk about for just a little bit, because we're getting on close to about an hour here. Let's talk a little bit about games in the classroom.
Sorta did.
Yeah, but I mean,
You walked
like,
away from that part.
I kind of had to, and I'll tell you guys why after the show. But
well, one of the ways that
yeah, I got nothing.
I talked earlier about how I was using it in the classroom, but there are other ways that, in order to give kids agency, like I was talking about before, you can have them not only play games, because people can figure pretty easily, oh, if I play Perudo, Liar's Dice, I can teach kids math and basic estimation and things like that. You can also do things like, all right, we're going to make a game in the class. We're going to make a game, and you say that we're going to teach somebody else how to do something through our game. So if you're going to make a game that teaches basic math, you pick a skill that the kids already know how to do fairly well, or you have them work as a group, and they collaborate. And that way, not only are they co-teaching each other when they're making something, but when you're done, you can then just use that game for younger kids if it's a good game. There's nothing that says you can't just, steal from your children. Why not, if it works? But I also have students who are constantly asking me to bring in my board games, because when I say board games and they don't know, they're not in the know, they think Monopoly, checkers, chess, Connect 4. Any Milton Bradley, Parker Brothers kind of, nobody really likes those games. If you do, you're wrong. Okay, so when I brought out Pandemic, and some of my kids were like, "What's that?" I'm like, "Oh, disease is infecting the Earth. You got to cure them all before the game beats you." They're like, "Wait a minute, you got to work together?" I said, "Yes." And they said, "Could we play?" And I went, "Yes." So I had these three boys playing the game, and they got really into it. And they played on easy mode. And I told them when they were done, they're like, "Hey, we beat it." I said, "Yep, you beat it on easy mode." They're like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, there were only this many plague cards, outbreak cards in there. If you want to play for real, throw 2 more cards in there. Here you go. Now try it." So it was fun watching them agonize over the best strategy. But it was teaching. If I wanted to turn that into a lesson, it's teaching basic reading and critical thinking skills. So it's a way that I'd have to do some sort of follow-up assessment or something to really show that they learned something from it. But you can incorporate all kinds of just using games in the classroom, or turn my classroom into a game and use that as a way of engaging and having kids get interested in participating. And there are also I could do some website drops here. There's things like 3D Game Lab. There's GameStar Mechanic, which teaches how to make games while they are playing games. It's really interesting. And it also teaches a lot about game mechanics, which is neat. I'm trying to think of others off the top of my head. There's World of Warcraft tools. They built the whole curriculum. Go for it. Go for it.
I wanted to plug really quickly. There is actually, it's a YouTube channel now, and it is called Extra Credits.
I love Extra Credits.
Games and stuff. A few months ago, I believe, they did a series of videos about games and education that I think are super cool, and they talk about like 21st century skills and games as ways for students to interactively understand if they get something right or not, versus like taking home homework and then not knowing if it's right or wrong, or getting feedback on it. all of these cool things that I, as not an education person, have not ever considered.
I'm not gonna lie. I completely stole my Crazy Eights. Everyone starts from zero, earns points thing. That is one of their. It's I think it was from last year or 2 years ago. They actually did something specifically on flipping the grade system because normally the grade system
Oh,
is
nice.
you start off at 100%, and every time you screw up, your grade starts going down little by little. So you will never keep that 100% unless you're a really good student. So kids are constantly trying to fight against this persistent downward pressure. With the zero up method that I'm using, they're always adding. They're always getting towards that goal. So even when I have kids who are screwing around in a class, even if they earn only 3 out of their 6 points for their daily grade, or 2, that's still 2 more points that they got closer to the goal as opposed to, well, now you're down to a D. Haha. You know, it's not punitive. And that's totally from extra credits. I completely stole that.
I think there's something.
I had a class in college that was like that. I think it was a media design class. It was like a media design theory class for my CTDA degree, and every assignment was just an addition of points. There wasn't ever this thing that, oh, okay, yeah, you really did crap on this test, so you've lost these points. It's just all added up, and that class felt incredibly less stressful than a lot of my other classes, which use the traditional, sort of grading method.
And it is because you're constantly progressing.
I think there's something inherent to human nature about adding points, and I've got a funny anecdote. At RIT freshman orientation, they had a bunch of students, maybe like 300, in an auditorium, and they were doing a lecture, and it had like a quiz thing where they're like, oh, if someone is drinking, should you A, call the police, or B, drink with them? That kind of thing.
B?
But basically, they gave everyone these little clicker things so they could vote on these quiz questions. But the person running the lecture didn't know that on the upper right-hand corner of the screen there was a running total of all the clicks. And it would increase every time someone clicked. So it took about 5 to 10 minutes for the entire lecture hall to just start madly clicking to get the number higher. I think it's something humans really love, making points go up.
Did you guys remember Progress Quest? Were you ever?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
That was the game you didn't even need to play. That was amazing. You started it up, and you watched the points go up, and you watched your character kill stuff, go back to town, sell stuff. And you'd go back, you'd go to class, leave it running, come back, be like, hey, look, I gained 8 levels while I was in class. I didn't even do anything. But those numbers went up. Yeah.
Yep.
It's the grandfather of Cookie Clicker.
Yep.
And it's funny because some executive at Blizzard is going, no, they've cracked the code. No, stop them. If only we could monetize people watching a screen that made numbers go up.
Well, television.
Wall Street.
You know what? Watching a Wall Street ticker, I bet, is somebody's World of Warcraft.
Only
I
during
bet
the
just
TV show. Like, I would watch
Someone's watching C-SPAN.
Hey, I watch C-SPAN sometimes.
And
If I am in, when I go to a
Can I just
con,
tell you something? We're done. It's the C-SPAN.
when I go to a con and it's late and we're done playing board games and we're in the hotel and no one, like, a laptop connection isn't working because the hotel TV sucks and we have to watch hotel TV, C-SPAN with like an audience is kind of fun.
Well, if you ever get sick of watching C-SPAN, NHK World, I discovered it at PAX in 2010. NHK World has become my favorite channel because it's news for like 10 minutes to a half hour, then like documentary, or cooking show or travel show for a half hour or so, and then news and then documentary thing. It's great.
So, did any of you guys, where you were in your academic years, were you ever in a class where a teacher actually had you play a game that wasn't just like, oh, here, play Monopoly to kill some time, but play a game that was both interesting and related to what was going on in the class?
Never.
See, that kind of sucks. 'Cause
Yeah.
I can't think of it. I can't think of any either. I can't think of any either, and it's kind of a bummer because I can imagine. Actually, wait, Oregon Trail.
I played a shitload of Oregon Trail, but it didn't teach
Oregon
me
Trail.
anything.
And
Or it wasn't
Odell's
part of the
down on-
class.
Dude,
It's
everybody in my wagon train was a Shakespeare character, and they all died. Even
The one thing that I learned is what dysentery was. Dysentery.
I don't know if this was part of a lesson or anything, but I remember playing a lot of Sim Town. And I don't think it was part of a lesson, but it was really fun. And I did learn about weird city things.
And there's another good extra credits where they actually talk about the difference between using games that exist to teach versus educational games, and they talk about the gap between the two, and how like Math Blasters is the same game that it's been for 20 years. They have not changed the format at all. And that's part of the reason why it's not the most interesting game, is because all you're doing is you're sticking a skin on a worksheet, right?
Mhm.
And that might work for like 5-6-year-olds, for little kids. They may buy into it a little bit, but if you put Math Blaster, no matter how complicated the math is, in front of a 10th grader, they're going to look at you like you've got a foot coming out of your forehead. They're going to be like, why are you putting this in front of me? This is not interesting. This is just work. You know, so if you can, if there's a more interesting way, or a way that you're using something that exists, or looking at something, we call it looking at something with a teacher's eye, and that's what the people who did World of Warcraft in schools did. Is they were playing World of Warcraft, and then wait a minute, we can use this to teach math. We can use this to teach language arts. We can use this to teach 21st century skills. So they went and developed this whole curriculum, which you can download for free online in World of Warcraft, just free to play, and you could probably do it in school if you were interested. Just saying. They did all this work, and it's something that they can back up using the standards, and that they can show that these kids that they tested it on actually improved their reading and math skills, and that's the kind of thing that we need. We need to stop having this separation between things we do in everyday life and that are fun and the way we learn, because the closer we get those two together, the more relevant everything becomes, and the more interesting everything becomes, and the more everybody wants to participate.
If someone
Adam, I
combined,
think you've said on the show. I think you've said on the show previously that you do not like the word
edutainment,
or you hate, or oh no, wait, you hate edutainment. That's the word you
Edutainment.
hate.
It's
Edutainment
nauseating.
sucks.
It's a
It's-
portmanteau that makes me sick.
What sounds better to you, edutainment or gamification?
Best
I
way
like
to
it at
make
5
it
points.
Kind of like edutainment better, just because of myth. Just because of
That
myth.
makes me want to brush my teeth.
So Math Blasters is terrible, right? But
Yes.
Yeah.
I really like games with really good stories. Gone Home is my game of. I don't know if it's in a year old yet. It's a
I'm
really good
looking at
game.
that game. I'm looking at that game.
Math Blasters plus Gone Home, done.
Even like The Room. If The Room was
Oh,
like
yeah.
a little bit more geometry based, kids could get so much out of that. Like spatial reasoning for kids with like motor impairments. Oh my god.
I'm pretty sure Tommy Wiseout isn't age appropriate.
I always want to throw forks.
I'll tell you
Actually,
guys something. I've been experimenting on my little brother with video games and learning and stuff. He's got Minecraft Pocket Edition on an old cell phone that we had that can run it. He's got it. He's been playing it, and I've been having him build increasingly complicated things.
Like
He's
using
been
Redstone?
building like, well, not using Redstone. I'm going to be teaching him Redstone and logic gates in a little bit. But I've been saying, okay, well, build like a pyramid. Build like an actual pyramid that measures properly. Build a cube. Build as close to a sphere as you can. I'm like, okay, now build Mega Man. And he builds a big Mega Man. So what I'm going to do is I'm trying to put together a computer that can run Minecraft and I'm gonna get him Minecraft for PC, and then I'm gonna teach him Redstone.
One of the
Nice.
things that I was thinking about doing, if my computers, I was promised, I was given one computer that was for RPG Maker VXAs for my classroom, and I started with that, and I was promised 3 more. If those 3 more get to my school, and I can talk to the IT guys to get a network set up, I want to get Minecraft EDU. Because I was talking with some of the students who are also big Minecraft fiends, and I said, what I would probably have you guys do if you wanted to do like a big deal project and make it worth like 500 points or something like that, I would give you access to Minecraft and a certain area on the map, and you would have to write a paragraph about a civilization. You'd have to make it up. Or if you wanted to use an existing one, that'd be fine too. But you make your own civilization, come up with what their religion looked like, build a temple, build, what does their city center look like? What does their society look like? Build it in Minecraft as if the society has collapsed, like build the ruins of it, and have like a little written paragraph or two to back up what you did. And 3 of my kids were like, I want to do that right now. I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't have the software. But I'm working towards that kind of. But there you go. You just take you take a game,
Shit.
which is what the kids are already interacting with and like. They know how to use it, and then they start using it towards something where you're building writing skills and you're building lateral thinking skills, which are both really important. And I could even make an argument for using it in the art classroom to do things with form and shape and color and texture. I could do lessons around that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Actually was thinking about Gone Home, and I had a thought.
You're always
No
thinking-
spoilers because one of us hasn't played it yet.
More than one.
Make that 3.
I'm sorry.
People, but the game is entirely what is it, like, rated PG. There's no graphic badness, but there is really nice themes, and I think
Oh man.
like a literature class could actually use that in place of some Holden Caulfield or something, and have a really, really good lesson plan around just that game as a literary work.
Or even using it to help catalyze high schoolers writing a first-person narrative. I mean, I know that a lot of high schoolers write personal things, but they don't write them particularly well.
Mhm.
The sense of style in a first-person narrative isn't necessarily there yet.
And it is again something that you could use to go over existing elements of literature like rhythm and I can't think of all of them right now, but
Pacing! Oh god, pacing.
pacing is also a really good thing because that's something a lot of my students don't understand either. When they were making their video game in RPG Maker, they would do something like they'd make the hero super powerful right off the bat and then walk through the bad guys. They're like, this isn't very interesting. I said, well, no, because it's no challenge. You took all the challenge out. So what they've started to do is adjust the games that they're making and make it so that there is more challenge in it. And then they're tweaking numbers and they're going into the database and fiddling with how often enemies appear and how strong they are. And you can use a game like Gone Home to do, like I said, to teach those elements of literature and writing. I don't see why people don't do it more often. I think because video games get a bad rap for being all Grand Theft Auto-y all the time, or having the general social skills of the League of Legends community. Yeah, I said it.
As a somewhat outsider to the game community, I have a secret theory about what they're going to be in 300 years. I don't know, watching them grow, I think that they're going to be, for our pop culture now, what theater was in the Elizabethan and Jacobean periods in England. Just the idea of something that's very populist and very decidedly low culture at the time, but then gets interpreted through a series of really highbrow lenses in the future.
Like cinema, for example?
I read a
I think gaming.
300 I read a 100-page critical reading of Spec Ops: The Line in my free time.
Oh my god, that game.
You made me watch a 45-minute deconstruction of Spec Ops: The Line. Our entire relationship was on the line from Spec Ops: The Line.
Good game.
Speaking of Gone Home, There's a guy who I met at the last Games and Education Symposium out here in Troy. His name is Paul Darvasi, Darvasi. He's a teacher at up in Toronto. He did a great presentation on using ARGs in the classroom. He did a whole ARG based around One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and it got crazy. He talks about how it was just for a month, and he was with seniors, and it was like in June, so they had like checked out, and he started this game, and he said like it got crazy out of control and really good. But he's also doing something about Gone Home, lessons 7 and 8, crafting an epic slideshow for a purple basketball revelation, and it's this whole lesson about a whole unit, I think, about using Gone Home to teach English. So somebody already beat us to the idea, but it shows that it was a good idea because he's doing it. But if you look up Paul Darvasi, he's a really interesting guy and has some really great ideas about. It was a 30-day ARG that he did called The Word Game. If you can look it up, really read about it because he did a lot of cool stuff with it. But again, he's using games like we were just saying to teach English. And there's no reason, if you're a teacher listening to this, and I really hope that some people listen to the show other than, me in the car the next day when I'm like, I'd like to listen to myself yesterday play. But you really, like, take your favorite game, take something you're passionate about, some game that you really enjoy, and figure out a way that you can use that in the classroom. Don't just be like, math, and then play the game. Like, really figure out a way to get in there and get to the guts of the game and use that to tie in whatever you're teaching, because it can really be helpful and kids really love it.
There's something I've been thinking about for quite a while, actually, stemming off that. Is it's a different kind of game that you did mention, ARGs, and using ARGs to teach, and I've been thinking about it since I used to play this game called Perplex City. And basically they had these cards where each card had a puzzle on it, each was different difficulty and things like that, and they ranged from very simple, like stuff you could think of by, it's a riddle. You look at the riddle, you figure out the answer, you put it in. All the way up to things like, find this one Japanese tourist from a single photo and a phrase in Japanese that says, find me. And the photo is not even taken in Japan, it's just taken in France somewhere. That's all the clues you get. That's it. You have to find this guy and talk to him to get the code to win the puzzle. The only card that was ever retired that was retired for being too hard was retired because it was impossible, or at least impossible within the reasonable bounds of the game. Hold on, I'm just going to look very quickly to pull up the actual thing it wanted you to prove.
Yeah. While Trip was doing that, the rest of you figure out what your plug of the day is going to be, because we're going to wrap this up fairly soon.
It asks you to prove a mathematical hypothesis called the Riemann hypothesis. I have no fucking clue what that's about, to be honest. This is like hardcore fucking crazy shit math. That is so far beyond anything I can deal with at this time of the morning. I haven't even finished my second cup of tea. No.
All right. So it has been a good show. We are way over the amount of time we typically take. We're at like an hour and 16 or 17 minutes.
That's all right. You can just cut out like 90% of the stuff I said. Just leave like one or two things I said in there. We'll be fine.
Well, actually, let me tell you one thing.
Whenever I interrupt somebody, just cut it. Said interruptingly.
Yeah, I used to put in the time to do that level of editing, but right now for this show now, all I do is put the music in the front and the music at the end and call it a day. So let's start off with some plugs. Adam, have you a plug?
I'm going to again plug Paul Darvasi. It's called The Word Game. You should look it up. I'm not sure you can get all the details online, but you can get a really good idea of what he did in his classroom. And also the Games and Education Symposium run by First Playable Software every year. I think they just started doing another one in New Jersey also. So there's two, one in Troy, New York, and one in Jersey. Even if you're not a teacher, all educators get in free, but you should definitely go and check it out because you can learn a lot, and it's a really fun and interesting experience.
Okay. Charlotte, do you have a plug?
It's completely unrelated, but I definitely want to plug David Mitchell's new novel. It's called The Bone Clocks, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's better than the Cloud Atlas. It's fucking phenomenal.
Okay.
In short.
All right.
Magical
Sure.
realism and crazy phantasmagoric weirdness.
Ooh. Okay. Churbs? Plug?
Yeah, actually. It's a really weird coincidence. I spoke about this the last time Adam was on, actually. But the book 2 of the Hip Hop Family Tree has just been released. It's on Amazon. Go get it. It's really good.
That's
By a
still on my
fellow
wish
called
list.
Ed Piscor, I believe. Unless I'm pronouncing his name horribly, which is probably, I've never seen that name before.
Uh-oh. Whoa.
But yes, there's book 1's been out. Book 2 is now out, so go and get that stuff. Book 2 covers 1981 to 1983. I think the Beastie Boys have just appeared.
Nelson, have you a plug to plug?
Yes, I do, and my plug this month will be Shameless. So I recently started working on New York Magazine, the magazine about New York and stuff, and we recently
I really want that to be the official tagline.
we
All the news
recently
fit to print and stuff.
I was working primarily on a blog about fashion and fashion stuff called The Cut, as in like tailoring and things of that nature. And we recently launched a new version of it that's super fast, and if I may toot my own horn, pretty awesome in the programming department. And I guess it is Fashion Week in New York, so if you're interested in clothing or the wearing of, or people walking on stages wearing clothing, check us out, because the things that I wrote are actually in front of millions of people for the first time in my life, and it's pretty cool.
Yay!
All right. Yay. My thing of the day, since it was brought up so many times in the course of this podcast, is the YouTube channel Extra Credits. It is such a great YouTube show. I have marathon. I have I basically have it running on a loop whenever I'm doing like electronic stuff on my table. Messing with Arduinos or doing a lot of soldering, just because I want to learn all the things they are talking about, and it's just so entertaining and so well written, and you just gotta watch it. It's fantastic. Go check it out. So, that was Friday Night Party Line episode 82. Thank you, Adam, Charlotte, Nelson, and Sherba for yet another fantastic episode. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye. It was a pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.